Ladies and gentlemen, Madame and Monsieur, Monsieur, Dominant and Heron, welcome to another DragonLance Saga episode. It is Majatog Paleswelt the 17th, and my name is Adam. Today, I'm going to give you my spoiler review of the Annotated Legends Test of the Twins novel. Now, I will be spoiling this story, so if you don't want to know about it, stop watching now. I'd like to take a moment and thank my collaborator patrons, the Heroes of the Lands, and invite you to consider becoming a patron or member of this channel by visiting the links in the description below. You can even pick up DragonLance gaming materials using my affiliate link. Now, this is my perspective only, and if you have any thoughts or disagree with mine, I invite you to share them in the YouTube chat. Now, the way these work, if you're unfamiliar, I'm going to be reading you my pre-written review, noting the annotations that I found of interest, and at the end, I'm just sort of bounce ideas, based on what I already read and my thoughts, general thoughts that I didn't perhaps write in the review proper. And also, if you have any questions or comments that you put up in the YouTube chat, I'm going to, sort of bounce off those as well. So let's have a bit of fun. It's a Tuesday evening. You got nothing else going on. Are there shows that drop on Tuesdays that people watch? Do people watch shows like at designated times anymore with streaming services? I don't know. Let's get into it. All right, we're talking again, just to make sure, the Annotated Legends version of Test of the Twins. Now, Book 1 gives us a vision of Raistlin's success. This is a moment in time that did occur, but can be altered simply because Tasselhoff exists and is traveling with Caramon through time. Now, they arrive near Solace in the future to discover that it's covered in ash. To their dismay, everything is dead and the raging magical lightning storm is destroying all of the land and all life. They arrived in Solace and discover a mass grave and Tika's tombstone. Caramon is torn apart until he sees his own skeletal corpse in front of Tika's tomb. He realizes that he built this in the future, that they're traveling too far with the time travel device, and that Raistlin hourglass constellation is in the sky. He is actively destroying the gods and Krynn simultaneously. Now, Tasselhoff and Caramon decide to try and prevent this future, but not entirely sure how. They use the device to travel to the forest of Wayrith, which attacks them Evil Dead style. Caramon shouts out to Parsalian, and the trees lead them to the Tower of Wayrith, which is now in shambles and nearly destroyed, something that Cataclysm couldn't even do. When they climb up to the top, they see Parsalian, half turned into stone, forced to witness the end of the gods and of time as a form of retribution for what he did to Raistlin in his test. Raistlin is actively mocking him and cursing him at this point. Now, Asinus is there as well, as he chronicles the end of the world, with Paladine's death at the hands of Raistlin, but before counseling Raistlin that he destroys everything as he destroys the gods, he will be utterly alone in the void as evil itself cannot create life. Raistlin will be trapped by his own ambition. For a split second, we actually witness Raistlin's sorrow and realization of this fact, telling me that he is not in total control and that Fist and Dantalus's soul is also urging him on. Either way, Caramon insists that he can and will change time and plans on entering the abyss to prevent Raistlin from leaving in order to fix and prevent this future, and the first book is over. Now, the annotations that I found of note in this was that Tracy hopes that people will relate real-world problems to the fiction that he writes, not to propose answers, but to provide context or perspectives. Now, Chapter 2 was a view of Caramon's consequences to failure. Caramon and Raistlin are addicts. Caramon is a recovering alcoholic, and Raistlin is addicted to magic. Another annotation says that Tracy doesn't see the moons of Krynn as actual gods, but rather as symbols of the power that magic taps into. And Finally, Astinus's book leads to the Book of Life. It looks like the Book of Life kept in heaven, as well as the 7 seals of the Book of Revelation. One thing that you're going to find in all of the annotations of the Chronicles, and especially in the Legends annotations, was that Tracy Hickman was really leaning into his faith, and he was really leaning into Joseph Campbell's I'm sorry. I just totally went blank. Hero with 1,000 Faces, the journey of the hero. Now, Book 2 picks up with Lord Soth, retelling his history and fate. It also shares his desire for Kitiara upon her death. He's tired of her mortal yearnings and desires her for himself. Tanis, Astinus, and Elistan are summoned by Dalamar the Dark, who shares his knowledge of Raistlin's machinations with everyone and their inevitable doom if Raistlin succeeds. He shares his plan to stop Raistlin from re-entering, but Tanis doesn't believe a word of it. Now, it's interesting because we get to see Tanis acting impetuously and is actively scolded by Astinus. Now, traditionally, Tanis has been the voice of measured reason, but when he thinks Tasselhoff, Caramon, and Crysania have been led to their deaths by Raistlin, he wants nothing more than to take it out on Raistlin's apprentice's hide. Now, faced with the news that Kitiara will be moving on to the city of Palanthas to present her army to Raistlin after his success, Tanis leaves to bring the news to Lord Gunther Uthwithstan. Now, Lord Gunther doesn't believe a word of it, but out of respect for Tanis, as being a hero of the lance after all, and seeing the concern in Tanis's eyes, he relents and sends word for the Knights of Solamnia to man the High Clerist's Tower in order to prevent Kitiara's army from passing it and thus entering Palanthas. We then flash into the Abyss and share a multitude of experiences of Raistlin's. Tests, so to speak, that he must overcome from his past. Now, he is traveling through the Abyss as if it were a mirror image of Krynn, and eventually recalls Tasselhoff's comment that if you imagine it, then you're brought anywhere within the Abyss. He's also stripped of his magic and relies heavily on Lady Crysania to protect him, which she does to her ultimate peril. Raistlin realizes that he is the reason his magic isn't working, and he figures out the secret of traveling through the Abyss, ultimately facing off against Achesis, who actually bows down to Raistlin and shows him the respect as if he were her equal. This is a fundamental affirmation of Raistlin's power. Now, we were only shown it in relation to others' perspectives until now, but to see it coming directly from a god is something else entirely. Now, we flash back to Tanis, who's mobilized in the High Clerist's Tower. He and Lord Gunther await Kitiara's army in the field of battle, but are stunned by her flying over the cloudy sky, in a flying citadel with her army aboard. The Knights of Solamnia do not have enough dragons to fight, and it passes right over their heads on its way to the city of Palanthas. Tanis scrambles onto a bronze dragon and flies to Palanthas in order to warn Lord Amothus to assemble the militia. Now, Dalamar's gifts await Tanis with a bracelet that will protect him from Lord Soth's Death Knight powers, and they all await the assault from Kitiara's army and Lord Soth's undead army. Now, some of the annotations I found interesting in Book 2 were that Soth's tragedy has its roots in David and Bathsheba from the Bible. Now, that's not much of a shock when you realize that Tracy Hickman created Lord Soth, and he's incredibly religious, and so of course he's going to refer to the Bible for inspiration. Another annotation was that Caramon and Raistlin's relationship was a mirror of a relationship that Tracy had as a young man. He actually had a relationship with a woman that was abusive and one-sided, and he used that as a way of defining Caramon and Raistlin's relationship, which is kind of interesting because that's also echoed in Crysania and Raistlin's relationship. Another annotation I found of note was that Fizban's fumbling is actually an outward parable. It's forcing those around Fizban to rely on themselves rather than on his divine power, and this was from Margaret Weis. it was kind of the same type of shock that I experienced when I realized that they said that Raistlin was never as sick as he led on to be. That he was using the sickness and his whispery voice to command authority from those around him, rather than actually being that sick. In the same way, Fizban is just messing with people around him, rather than being actually a bumbling idiot, you know? And those of us who like Star Wars, we see this same parallel when Luke Skywalker arrives on Dagobah for the first time and meets Yoda. You know, Yoda's just playing up this sort of goofy creature role that Fizban is echoing. And this is actually doubled down in the fact that Margaret Weis is a massive Star Wars fan and actually hated the end of Return of the Jedi. And so there's a lot of parallels with not only Tracy's religious background, but also with Margaret's love of Star Wars in this entire Dragonlance trilogy. Now, Michael Williams provides his thoughts about the poetry that he wrote throughout the entire Legends, and it's refreshing to see a poet critique their own work years later, sharing what they intended to communicate with their poetry, who their inspirations were when they wrote it, and how they feel that it actually turned out. Another annotation of note was that Tracy Hickman notes that the untested Palanthian army could be a parallel to the United States military in the mid-1980s. This was a pretty big shock for me. On one hand, it's really refreshing that an author doesn't hold back any punches from his inspirations or his perspectives when writing work. On the other hand, I can't help but take it personally, being a veteran of the U.S. Army and being a son and being raised by Vietnam, Korea, and World War II veterans, to say that we were ill-prepared, like the Palanthas militia was ill-prepared to face Kittiar and Lord Soth in any of the conflicts that we faced as a nation, is a little insane until you actually look at the objective reality of the outcomes of some of the conflicts, like, most recently Afghanistan, but even before that with Vietnam. So it's apropos, it's appreciated. I don't necessarily agree with all of the suppositions, but I like that he is challenging you. Or at least, if not challenging, sharing his own perspectives. Okay, and the final reflection of, thank you, Skull Cowboy, I appreciate you. Thanks for joining live. The final annotation that I thought was of interest in Book 2 was that Tracy reflects on Amothas's concern for Palanthas and how it's mirrored in the September 11th attacks on the United States, which was something that was really, really interesting for me to hear because I never made any connection with the attack on Palanthas and the attacks on New York in September 11th. One interesting thing about September 11th is I was actually active duty military in the United States Army when that happened. I was stationed over in Germany, in Mannheim, Germany. I was pulling CQ duty, which is basically manning the battalion desk. And all of a sudden, a lieutenant came running up from the sort of like the battle room, as it were. And she was like, "You need to come down here. You need to check this out." And so I ran down to the command office, and the television from the U.S. was playing, and it showed the active assault on the Twin Towers. And I stood there not comprehending what was actively happening. I was blown away by the fact that, one, anyone would have the balls to attack the only true first world nation on this planet, and two, that we didn't see it coming. And then, of course, realizing later that we did see it coming and that the president was warned about it, that really bothered me. But to the point of the moment, I was stunned in the same way that Lord Amothas was stunned that Lord Soth and Kittiara would actually assault his city that went through the cataclysm nearly unscathed, that had lasted for all of history as a center of peace and prosperity for all of Krynn, through all of the ages of time until now. That is very interesting. Okay, that being said, Book 3 is the Battle of Palanthas, but before the Flying Citadel and Lord Soth storm the city, Caramon and Tasselhoff appear and enter. Caramon is intent on entering the Tower of High Sorcery somehow, and he sends Tasselhoff to help Tanis Half-Elven, as in the future, Tanis is actually killed by Lord Soth. Tasselhoff ends up stealing the magical bracelet of protection from Tanis, who then chases him down the street as Lord Soth demands that the city surrenders, but of course Lord Amethyst refuses, and Lord Soth then attacks. Now, the Flying Citadel unleashes the dragons and draconian army, which battles the Palanthas militia, Knights of Solamnia, and all of the available good dragons that are defending the city. So we have this massive battle happening in the sky and on land in Palanthas at the same time. Now, Caramon actually enters Shoiken Grove, something that Tasselhoff Burfoot, a creature who is immune to fear itself, could not even do, just by sheer determination. And, of course, Shoiken Grove wins in the end. It actually consumes him through fear and through its undead physical presence. And if it wasn't for that magical bracelet that Tanis had, he would never have been able to pull him out of the Shoiken Grove and been stunned and amazed not only by the fact that Caramon was able to actually enter and go as far as he did, but more importantly, that Caramon is completely physically and psychologically transformed from the last time that Tanis Half-Elven saw him. The last time Tanis saw Caramon was at the beginning of the very first Legends book, when he was a drunken, bloated blob of a human, just a pathetic shadow of who he actually was before. But he grew up around Caramon. He's a lifelong friend, and the version of Caramon that he sees in this moment is one that he has never witnessed before. Caramon has made a complete transformation, not just from the alcoholic that he saw him as, but from his original version of himself. This is the first time that Tanis Half-Elven actually sees Caramon with determination, with focus, and with an actual purpose. So when Parsaline at the beginning said that originally transporting Caramon and Chrysania back in time in order to save his soul, everyone thought that they were talking about Raistlin Magir. But they weren't. He was actually talking about Caramon Magir. And this is the realization of this moment. So let me, sorry, I went off on a rant here and I totally lost my place here. They decide to use the Flying Citadel in order to enter the tower because clearly they can't get through the Shoiken Grove. And they refuse to let Tasselhoff go with them via the time travel device. Tasselhoff is beside himself. He prays to Fizban for help getting into the tower, and coincidentally, in an act, I don't know, maybe only Fizban could do, a dragon just happens to literally crash land right next to Tasselhoff. And it ends up being the same dragon that he rode with Flint into battle in Dragons of Spring Dawning. And so you have this really great moment of Tasselhoff trying to convince the dragon to take him into direct danger. And the dragon's like, look, you're just a tiny little creature. This is too dangerous for you. And he's like, no, but please. And he ends up conning the dragon into taking him to the Flying Citadel, which is a hilarious moment. Let's see. Inside, Tasselhoff ends up rescuing Tanis and Caramon, who end up being pinned down against a locked door, battling Draconians, basically the guard force of the Flying Citadel. Tasselhoff meets a gully dwarf, who they all then trick into telling them where the control room is. And it ends up with Tasselhoff and the gully dwarf on his shoulders, piloting the Flying Citadel in order to try to go over Shoiken Grove to get to the Tower of High Sorcery. Ultimately, they actually crash into the tower before Caramon and Tanis force, through communication, Tasselhoff to sort of back off, and Tanis and Caramon jump onto the tower in the same place that, centuries before, Fist and Dantalus's own driven mad apprentice cursed the Tower of High Sorcery in Palanthas by jumping off and impaling himself on the fence below. Nice little note. Doesn't really have any bearing on the story. Okay, so, dude, I genuinely think Kinder it's like they're constantly on shrooms, It's definitely psychedelics. I don't know if it's as intense as LSD, but it's certainly, there's something happening there. Okay, so inside of the tower, Dalamar was anxiously prepared and terrified of the moment when Raistlin would step through the portal and he would have to then face off against this Shalafi with the intent of killing him in order to save all of, life, which is hilarious. And he hears this ringing of an alarm as someone is entering through the Shoiken Grove. And he's like, well, the Grove is going to take care of it. And then he hears another alarm and battle at the base of the tower as someone enters the tower, and he's like, someone will take care of it. Like, what are you doing? Your job is to protect this tower, and you're actively letting someone come up through it. And of course, he must know who it is, though he doesn't suggest that he does. And then ultimately you hear, Dalamar, help, I've come to talk to you. And it's Kityara on the other side, literally stripped of her armor, probably in the sexiest moment that Dalamar has ever witnessed her, bare flesh. I mean, not the sexiest, because let's be honest, they have had relations before. But still, Kityara is known for this. She, just runs up to her and to him and sort of hugs him and lays her head on his chest. And, a man being a man is just like, okay, well, she doesn't mean any ill will. And he's like, everything's okay. I'm here to battle your brother. It's all going to be good. And then she literally stabs him in the chest. Like, you didn't see the knife, dude? You didn't think, even after Lord Soth told you that he was going to play her against you, you didn't see it coming? Come on. Come on. All right. I thought Lady Chrysania was stupid, but I tell you what, Dalamar the Dark is a dumbass. All right. That being said, he then throws up this magical shield and she just starts throwing random stuff like clocks and plates and spoons and knives because she thinks it's going to wear him down. Apparently they don't know advanced Dungeons and Dragons mechanics because it's like a timed thing. Like you throw it up and you don't think about it. You set it and forget it type situation. But what does she know? She's not a magic user. So she's throwing random stuff thinking that's going to challenge him in maintaining his shield in front of him. And he's like, I've got to just inch over to this wand of lightning bolts in order to stop this crazy woman. And the irony of this entire scene is that they both want the exact same thing. How crazy is this? She wants to kill Raistlin. He wants to kill Raistlin. She says she wants to hand over the army, but I think at this moment, she's still working for her Queen of Darkness. And so if they just weren't complete morons, they could be like, hey, we're kind of, we're wearing the same jersey. Shouldn't we be going against the other side? We should team up. Team venture. Put your fingers out and touch them in the sky or something. They should be doing that, but they don't. And actually in one of the annotations, they state that they could have beaten Raistlin together, but that evil always consumes itself. And so they just don't trust each other. So they don't, I grew up with Saturday morning cartoons as a young man. And if there's one truth I've ever learned, it's that the enemy of my enemy is my temporary friend. They totally would have teamed up if this was a Saturday morning cartoon. Totally. All right. That being said, I keep losing my place because I'm just going off on rants. Dalamar was anxiously preparing to attack Raistlin when he exits the abyss in order to defeat the Dark Queen, and Kityara fights her way through Shoiken Grove and up the tower. He lets her in. She attacks him. Now, they battle nearly to the death. He actually ends up getting the lightning bolt, searing her chest and, literally, setting her on the the road to death when she, almost cleaves his arm off of his body. I mean, it goes right through his shoulder into his shoulder blade. It is hanging, I guess, by random tendons and bits of flesh, sort of hangy, wet little bits that are splashing blood everywhere as they fling around. They're both on the verge of death at this moment. And yeah, as Thomas mentions, thanks for joining live, man. I appreciate you. is this wimpy ring of healing that Dalamar is wearing. And so he can stop the flow of blood, but he's still pretty much screwed with this hanging limb of an arm. So they pretty much cancel each other out in this moment. And then coincidentally at the same time, Caramon is just like, hey, Dalamar, can you like call off this guard dog? Because there's the guardians that Dalamar sent to the top of the tower to prevent anyone from coming inside. Now, here's the deal. Dalamar knows that Caramon wants to stop Raistlin. Dalamar wants to stop Raistlin. Why the hell would he send a guard up to the rooftop? Now, he thinks that maybe Kitiara or someone else is coming in the Flying Citadel in order to try to get into the Tower of High Sorcery. But if he just used his brain for half a second, maybe a quarter of a second, he witnessed the Flying Citadel moving around like an Etch-a-Sketch in the 1980s. It was like left and right and back and forward and up and down. It was just all crazy. Like they didn't know what they were doing. Up until that point, it was running perfectly smooth and going straight toward Palanthas. So obviously someone is in control that wasn't in control before. But he doesn't do the math, so he doesn't think about it. He's just terrified to face his Shalafi. Okay, that being said. He ends up calling off the guardians of the tower, and Caramon and Tanis come running and bursting into the room, just as Kitiara throws the dagger that would normally have killed Dalamar, which then instead bounces off Tanis' armor. Tanis realizes someone else is in the room, and then realizes it's Kitiara. And I gotta tell you something here. I thought Tanis was over Kitiara at the end of Dragons of Spring Dawning. By all rights, by all rational thought, he is with Laurana. You don't get a better option than Laurana in life. She is heralded by multiple cultures, by everyone, even Raistlin, who only sees rotting future death. She's seen as beautiful. So, like, just appreciate what you got, Holmes. What are you doing? I mean, I just don't... I don't know why he's so hooked on Kitiara. All I can say is she must be insanely good in the sack. Like, that's the only thing I can think of. Because otherwise, he should have totally moved on by now. But he's not. And even... she's, like, so terrified because Dalamar told her, like, look, you've been sold out by Lord Soth. He just wants he wants your corpse. He wants you in the afterlife for himself. That's why he set you onto Palanthas. He knew you were going to fail. He was setting you up to fail. And she's like, oh, I hope that's not true. Like, oh, shit. Was I just screwed over? Oh, well, I'm still going to try to kill you. Like, she's so stupid in this moment. She should completely see, especially because they want the same thing, which is so frustrating as a reader. But she doesn't believe him. For whatever reason, even though there's a moment of her seeing the truth in the statement. And then she, I guess, in death, accepts that, oh shit, Lord Soth does want my ass. Okay. Hey, Tanis, please don't let him take me. Please? Like, we're cool, right? Like, I let you and Laurana get away from the temple in the last book. Maybe you could just hook a sister up, you know? That's all I'm asking. Just hook a sister up. Don't let me be taken by the dead guy. And so the dead guy walks in. And Dalamar's like, Tanis, don't be stupid. Just back off. Don't be dumb. You're going to die. Don't even try it. It's Lord Soth. Like, come on. And so Tanis is like, but I don't know. Maybe she's worth me dying. And her still being taken. I don't know. And then he thinks, like, oh yeah, I do have a sweet woman at home. I am happy. I don't need her anymore. So fuck that bitch. Take her, Lord Soth. And he literally just backs off. So why was there hesitation in the first place? If all he did was take a 2 count and then back away from Lord Soth, why was there the drama of him perhaps facing off against Lord Soth? It made no sense. You're either pining for this dead girl or you're like, hey, I've moved on. She's crazy. Like, we're done. It's one or the other. You don't get both. All right. That being said, Soth is chef, dude. He is straight up. Soth! All right, that being said, he backs off. Lord Soth is like, hey, I don't need to attack Palanthas anymore. I got the prize I was going after. My plan worked out. My world is complete. Peace out. And literally disappears to the ground like circa the gate. Like he just opens a hole in the ground and like jumps down with her. And that's it. Like he's gone. And so all the dead people leave Palanthas immediately because they're like, hey, boss man's out. I'm not sticking around. I got nothing holding me here. I'm not making a buck. And so it's just draconians and dragons that don't even have their flying citadel anymore, that were members of Kidiar's army, that are still fighting the residual militia and Knights of Solamnia. But that's not all, because this is the point that Caramon is like, I'm going to go kill my brother. So he steps into the abyss. Now for Caramon, of course, this is why he came here in the first place. His entire character arc is solely wrapped up in this moment. He is prepared to die. And it's a good thing. Like, of course, yes, please die so that the future doesn't suck. You know, save literally the world for this one moment of killing your brother and then being killed yourself. Goes into the abyss and immediately sees Crysania. And she's blind, which is this, you know, I'm blinded by my own ignorance moment, which we'll get to in an annotation in a minute. But she's completely blind, on the verge of death. And, you know, it's this really nice sort of ironic moment because she's the one that literally blinded Caramon at the end of the last book because he was trying to kill Raistlin. Now she's the one that's blind. And, hey, what do you know? He's still trying to kill Raistlin, his brother. So it's just a really great little turn of the moment. Yeah, she's blinded by the light, wrapped up like a deuce. Another run of the night. Sorry about that. I had to. So, you know, they're talking and they're having a good time. And then he starts to move back to the gate of the abyss because he sees this sort of oncoming doom. Not so much as sees it, but feels it. And then he sees his brother, Raistlin, who has literally battled every single bad guy in the abyss up to this point and has won everyone. So much so that the Queen of Darkness herself, with no help left, has to go after this annoying ass human on her own and is like chasing him down. Now, what I don't understand is that if you can just think about where you want to be and then you suddenly appear there, why is she physically chasing Raistlin? Why doesn't she just think, hey, I'm in front of Raistlin, and then she's there? But okay, let's cue the metal music, as Skull Cowboy says, because this is, you know, appropriate for the moment. She's chasing him down, and Raistlin sees Caramon, and he's like, wah, wah, wah. What are you doing here? I'm here to stop you. You know, I'm going to have to kill you. Yeah, I got that. But I'm going to kill you too. Why are you looking at me with pity in your eyes? Like literally, the moment that he's about to kill Caramon, he sees pity in Caramon's eyes, and that completely changes everything. So much so that he stops casting the spell that was going to kill Caramon. Now, I get that Raistlin hates pity. Like, you know, he's always, you know, sort of looking after the downtrodden and stuff, especially with Bapu. But for that to be the one thing that stops him is a little insane, but okay, I'm going to buy it because it's a fantasy novel. So he's like, hey, I need you to understand where I'm coming from so you no longer pity me for me to kill you so that I can then get out of here. All the while, the Queen of Darkness is breathing down her necks, but we've got time for this pity party redux here, so let's just get into it. Weird. And then Caramon is just like, I don't pity you. I just see the future that you're gonna live, and it sucks. So stop. and Raistlin's like, bitch, please. And he like tries to pull like a chunk of hair out of Caramon's head, but instead knocks his sword out and like he does like this weird bitch slap to his head. He like touches his head in order to feel the memories that Caramon had about the future that he experienced, and he suddenly realizes, oh shit, I'm a dumbass. Caramon's right. I'm going to be in darkness all alone. This sucks. Like, my ambition isn't my own ambition. And we see this moment where Raistlin is not entirely consumed by his passion. This little hollow pocket of air inside of Raistlin that is actually the original Raistlin. And that little hollow pocket is what allows Raistlin to say, take Krysania and get out of here, dude. Just go. Just, all right, I see you. I see what you're saying. I was wrong. My bad. I'm going to stop it. So get, you know, he has what alcoholics refer to, that's right, Skull Cowboy, as a moment of clarity. And so he tells Caramon to take Krysania and get out of the portal, which Caramon, being, yeah, sort of the doofus that he is, enlightened or not, at this moment, yeah, sort of hesitates. So much so that the Queen of Darkness is, you know, like sort of evil person fashion, like creeping up behind him with, you know, one step at a time, bouncing their arms up and down like claws. And he's like, go! She's gonna get out of the portal, dumbass! Like, you need to get! And it was sort of this Harry and the Hendersons moment, if you'll excuse the comparison, where Caramon's literally Harry, and Raistlin is the Hendersons, and he's like, we don't want you here! Get out! You're a monster! And Bigfoot's like, you don't love me. It's just so ridiculous. Anyway, Caramon is like, okay, well, I'm going to take this girl, and we're going to get out of the abyss, and we're going to close the portal with your staff of magi, magus. And then Raistlin goes sort of like, as everyone in every film has ever done when they're faced with their moment of death, they sort of flash back to the good moments in their life. Raistlin like sort of reverts to childhood, where Caramon is taking care of him and doing like little shadow puppets against the wall. And because of his sacrifice, he is granted sleep. Now, this is a moment of contention for every Dragonlance fan I have ever had the privilege of talking to. Did Raistlin suffer in the abyss at the whim of Tikhisis for all of eternity, or was he granted sleep and peace? Well, I know the answer from the authors, but I'm going to wait to tell you it. Okay, it was answered in an annotation. I totally just ripped that entire thing, and I didn't even read any of my review. Let me see if I can try to catch up to where I was. Krysania is made the Reverend Daughter, and she ends up heading the Church of Paladine and presiding over Elistan's funeral. Tasselhoff dumps the Flying Citadel off in the country. Like, literally sets it down in some dude's backyard. And he's just like, have a good day. You can take this, Gully Dwarf. Like, literally, that was what happened to the Flying Citadel. It's like just sitting in someone's backyard, which is an insane thought. Anyway, Caramon, Tanis, and Tasselhoff lead for Palanthas, and then Tasselhoff and Caramon end up returning to Solace, where Caramon reunites with Tika. The entire last half of this novel had my eyes shrouded in mist and my spirit filled with happiness. I found that I love the character of Tasselhoff more and more with every single reading of this novel, and seeing Caramon finally becoming whole fills me with immense joy. I love the Tanis at the end of this novel, but it's really the tragedy of Kiryar and Lord Soth that steals the show for me. Now, fans of the Lord Soth Ravenloft novels will know the role that she ends up playing with Lord Soth. Ultimately, I don't understand how Raistlin was redeemed and granted sleep, then returned in the future books as if he wasn't. It's an inconsistency that I will have to look into more, as I admit that my memory may be faulty after 30 some odd years of reading these novels. But truthfully, this was a perfect cap on the Legends and Chronicles trilogies. I really appreciated how it joined more characters to the story rather than just Tasselhoff, Raistlin, Caramon, and Chrysania, it felt like a creative and entertaining conclusion to the characters that I've grown to love for decades, and revisiting this story with these annotations actually provides entirely new insights. So here it is. The annotations in this final book of this novel. Margaret Weis notes that it is tradition to provide the hero with a means of protection against insurmountable odds. And she thought it would be funny to give this type of protection to Tanis and then have it taken away at the last second, which admittedly is a bit of a dick move. Kind of shitty, but it is kind of funny too. So I can respect her idea there. Dalamar and Kitiara could have defeated Raistlin together, but evil always turns on itself, and it isn't their natures to work together anyway. This is the theme that you're going to find in every single Dragonlance story, that evil will inevitably turn on itself. It does not match up with any reality that we live, but it's a nice fable that we like to tell each other. Margaret Weis says that Tanis Half-Elven and Dalamar the Dark are actually mirror images of each other. Tanis acts selflessly, and Dalamar the Dark acts selfishly, and Tanis Half-Elven acts selflessly. So ultimately, when they're staring off into the abyss, they literally represent the balance of all of Dragonlance in that moment. Caramon is actually a savior figure, like Superman or Jesus. He came from a young, naive man to a bold general with determined will. This is a total, complete, final character arc end. Chrysania had to go blind in order to truly see, which is kind of ironic, a little bit trite as a poetic form. Chrysania's words mirror Christ's words on the cross, which is a little heavy-handed religiously, but that's what Tracy Hickman said. Another one is Dalamar is right about Kitiara. She uses others because she's an addict like her brothers. Caramon is addicted to the bad relationship. Raistlin is addicted to power in magic. Kitiara is addicted to power, military power and control. I don't like the addiction parables for Caramon. It makes sense for Raistlin and Kitiara, but for Caramon, it's just a little too easy to overcome, whereas it literally controls Kitiara and Raistlin, so it's not quite fair there. Raistlin is redeeming himself and was granted peace and sleep. So Margaret Weis said that this was an argument that every fan has about the end of the novel. The truth is that Raistlin was not tormented in the abyss by Takesis for all time. He was murdered and granted peace in death and sleep. Period. He redeemed himself. Very sort of Darth Vader at the very end of Return of the Jedi, which ironically was the ending that Margaret Weis hated, and yet she gave it to Raistlin, which is completely ironic. I did not read the book that way. I was one of those who truly believed that Raistlin was tortured and trapped for all of eternity, which also is the way my memory is telling me that he was brought back in future books. So if that wasn't the reality, why the hell did they bring him back in that way? So I'm going to have to go back and read those again to make sure I understand that fully. Tracy noted that Raistlin did not sacrifice himself for the greater good of the world. He did not sacrifice himself for his brother. He did not sacrifice himself for Chrysania. He's a selfish person. He sacrificed himself because he realized that he was wrong, and that his death was the only thing that he could do to make things right. He was so narcissistic that the only thing he could do was to try to right his own mind in the end, which is to kill himself. Not because it was good. So you have to ask the question, if he murdered himself, or he allowed himself to be murdered by the Queen of Darkness, for himself, how is that redeeming himself? Honestly? Okay. I don't get it. It's still narcissism. Okay. Anyway, The end of the Test of the Twins feeds into the War of Souls in that the gods are not omniscient or omnipotent, but ultimately subservient to the high god, and thus the gods are fallible within themselves. This is something that Tracy Hickman has been hammering home in every single annotation, it seems like. And that is that they were laying the seeds to the War of Souls trilogy from as early as Chronicles. Now, I think a little bit of that is revisionist history, but either case, that's the way the narrative that they're selling. And that the entire pantheon of deities is modeled after Tracy's own religious pantheon, which is Mormon. And so you have your high god, and then you have other gods that were good humans in previous lives that were granted planets to sort of look after in their afterlife. That's actually what Mormons believe, by the way. And then, you know, if they're good enough, they'll be given their own planet and to be a god over that own planet, which is pretty insane if you think about it for 2.5 seconds. But ultimately, that's what Krynn is to him, is a Mormon planet. All right, do your thing, man, if that's what you want to do. I think it's insane. I think it's crazy. It actually kind of skews the entire saga in my mind a little bit, but I can't help but still kind of love it. I don't know. Maybe I'm a sucker for punishment. Ultimately, I loved this concluding novel, and though the annotations added context after the previous book's annotations, I didn't find it as egregious as those. I would definitely recommend this version of the novel to any fan of Dragonlance or fantasy fan in general. So, where's the magic in this world, Thomas asks? Well, if you're religious, then you believe there's magic everywhere, and you can just bless and ask your God for things to happen, and they'll happen. I personally do not subscribe to that idea, but religious people definitely do. So that's where it is. I just went to the Stanley Hotel because I love horror films and I love The Shining. And I went on a ghost tour hoping, I don't even believe in ghosts, but I was hoping for some sort of ghost experience because it's just like the way I see aliens. I want to believe. I desperately want to believe. I haven't had any personal experience, so I can't believe, but I want to believe. I don't believe in this idea of faith. That's a bunch of bullshit. I believe in real life experience. And so I want to have a ghost experience and stuff. Some weird stuff happened, but nothing that I would consider supernatural. So that's kind of where I land with all of this. I don't mind if other people are religious. If Tracy Hickman wants to write an amazing trilogy grounded in Mormon theology, well, he already did that. And I'm okay with that. I don't care. I still think the Dragonlance is a great series. I still think the Legends trilogy is superior to the Chronicles trilogy and a fantastic trilogy in its own right. And I still think that even though it is steeped in Mormon dogma, it is still worthwhile. Because I like it. It's fun. I enjoy it. Hey, nothing wrong with that thought, Thomas. Nothing wrong at all. Skull Cowboy, you want to strangle Tasselhoff half the time? I got to be honest, I don't know where all the hate is. I get more joy and laughter out of Tasselhoff's moments than I do out about any other characters. And I understand that's how it's written, and so it's supposed to be that way. But I genuinely love Tasselhoff as a character. He's not quite a Kender anymore. He was changed in Chronicles trilogy, and so he's like a Kender evolved a little bit. But he's hilarious. He's like R2-D2 of Star Wars. He's literally the hero of everything. Like everyone says, no, Luke Skywalker or Anakin Skywalker or, Rey are the heroes of Star Wars. No. R2-D2 literally was the one that got everyone out of every situation that they were going to die in. He was the one that saved everyone in every film or provided them with the information in order to do what they had to do. He was the one person. Tasselhoff is the exact same way. When he says, I have to go and help Caramon, he gets in trouble without me. Like, he was right. Caramon and Tanis went up to the Flying Citadel, and they ended up trapped, ready to be killed by an army of Draconians. If Tasselhoff didn't get up there with Flame Strike or Fire Strike or whatever his name was, the dragon, they would have died. Like, he literally saved them. And that was just this book. He saved every single one of them in every single book. Like, Tasselhoff is the true hero of all of these. I'm convinced of that fact. So I can appreciate that people don't like him as a character or don't like Kender in general. Cool. That's fine. I really do. I think he's great. I love Kender. They bring an element of whimsy and childish playfulness, to this saga. The support characters are more important than the main ones. It certainly seems that way, Thomas. It certainly does. All right, that being said, that is my review. I'm sorry, I don't know why I went on such a rant. I usually am really good about reading the writings that I put up and just sticking to my script, but I really went on a rant on this one. That's my review of the Annotated Legends, Test of the Twins. Have you read the annotated version? Do you enjoy these reviews that I'm putting out there about these novels? Feel free to email me at info@dragonlance-saga.com or comment below. I'd like to once again invite you to consider becoming a patron or member of this channel, and you can pick up Dragonlance gaming materials using my affiliate link, all of which are in the description below. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga, and I hope you'll join me in the celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with Dragonlance Saga, and until next time, Slán Javar. You know what drives me crazy about these? I actually had this all queued up, and I never once went to it. This is, I think, the second or third time I've done this. I have images of all of the artwork that's related to the story that I'm talking about, and it's set up in a timed slideshow, and I completely forgot to switch over to it. Drives me crazy. Every freaking time almost this happens. Come on. All right. I'll try better for next time. Have a great night, everyone.